Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we were discussing about the real and the apparent man. So the human being, to all appearance, he is a physical or at the most a psychophysical being who is changeful, a changeful mortal creature, nothing more than that for all of us. But if you just analyze a bit deeply, there is something, some existence beyond the physical body and the mental or the subtle body as well, because he is the knower of both. A knower cannot be the known, one who knows. The subject cannot be an object. So the subjective self, which is distinct from the physical body and the mind, is because he knows the body, he knows that I am the body, I possess a body, not that I am a body. But erroneously he may feel that he is a body, but actually the right way of telling is I have a body. When I say I have a body, I possess a body, and which the my consciousness gives it consciousness, and that's why I know it. But suppose the body dies, then the body is not conscious, so consciousness vanishes. Where does it go? It cannot go anywhere, it has to persist. So also, just as he perceives external objects, he is the knower of his own body, just as he knows other things outside of him. So he perceives all his bodily conditions, the different pranas that run the body, and also the mental states. He can feel that I am sad, I am happy, my waves, thought waves are uh, just bubbling up, and I'm not in control of that, or I am in control of that. So all these mental states are also observed by an entity. So the knower, who is the knower, and the object which is known cannot be identical. That's a fundamental rule. I mean, they ever have to be distinct. I know certain things which is outside of me. I can't know. So they cannot be identical. So consciousness, the pure consciousness, is intrinsic in the knower. If he was not conscious, if he did not possess consciousness, or if the self did not possess consciousness, it would not have known the things outside of itself, including the body and the mind. So the thing known is destitute of it. It is not connected to it. Neither the body nor the mind has consciousness inherent in it. If consciousness were inherent in the body or in the mind, then neither could die. I mean, neither could ever lose consciousness. We see the body loses consciousness, the mind becomes still. So, for the same reason, the real man, the pure consciousness, the knower within, is distinct from each of the 10 organs which constitute the body, both in its gross as well as subtle aspects. Which are the organs? Vedanta describes them as the organs of perception, the 5 organs of perception and the 5 organs of action. And some also say mind is also a 11th organ, because mind is uh, a predominant sense organ, because it gathers all the sense perceptions and gives it a uh, a sort of unification. All the thoughts get unified in the mind. The mind perceives. So that is why some of the schools of Vedanta also consider the mind to be the 11th organ. Otherwise, normally there are 10 organs, 5 organs of perception: the sight, the smell, the taste, the hearing, the ears. These are all organs of perception, but at the same time, the skin, touch. But at the same time, they their subtle aspects also are connected to the mind. So organs are not just gross. So that's why we call psychophysical organism. So our organs are both gross as well as subtle. They have a subtle counterpart. So, and the brain unifies all this. Apparently the brain unifies all these experiences, and we think the mind is in the brain, but mind is in Vedanta is independent of the mind. It just as it doesn't, these organs, they exist even after the physical organs are inoperative. For example, we close our eyes. The excellent example given is when we close our eyes, when we start dreaming, our sense organ, our subtle sense organ, our subtle body continues to see things. Obviously, the eyes are closed, so there's no way that perception is actually taking place through the gross body. So where does this perception come from? The subtle body sees these things. So we have a subtle counterpart to all the five organs of perception, and then it registers in the brain, and the brain sends out a signal for response. The stimulus elicits a response from all the five organs of action, and then we act upon it. The willpower, the will within us, the will faculty of the mind attaches itself to the sense organs or organs of action, karmendriyas, and they act, and they are forced to act, or maybe they act out of volition or will. So human being, the real self, the real man, not the apparent man. The apparent man is the body and the organs and all those things. He knows whether a particular organ is operative or inoperative. Who knows if suppose for some reason you lose your hearing, something happens and you don't hear things normally, then you put a hearing aid, or you tell people that I am not able to hear. So he knows whether a particular organ is operative fully or not operative, whether it is sound or unsound. The organs, are they functioning properly? So who knows this? It is the knower self. So thus the real man, the knowing self as it is known, or the jivatma, is other than the body, other than the organs, other than the mind even, and other than their aggregate. Whether you consider the organs, the body, the external organs, the internal organs, the mind, if you consider our whole personality as a combination of all these things, as a synthetic whole, an aggregate of all the things, even then the knowing self seems to be separate. It can perceive each one of them individually, it can teach each organ, or even collectively. When we hear, when we see, when we taste, when we smell, we see and we perceive certain things. At the same time, we react. So all these karmendriyas, gyanendriyas, mind and subtle and gross existences respond, and they are other than the whole, respond singly or in tandem with each other. They combine with each other and give a collective response, or a collective perception comes to the knowing self. So the central principle of consciousness is always the ruler, which is known as the antaryami. Antaryami means one who controls the inner, one who, antaryami is the Lord who controls the inner self. That is why it is also known by a technical word which is known as pratyagatman. Atman is the self, but the self according to Advaita Vedanta is the universal self. But how do you refer to the personal self? Because of the ego, because of the buddhi, you feel that I have an individual self, and that individual self, jivatma, or also known as pratyagatman, that is the one which does sadhana and tries to disconnect itself with all the transitory phenomena, as it were, and tries to unite itself. The pratyagatman tries to unite itself. It is the most sattvic aspect of our personality, which identifies more with the inner self than the outer body and the organs. Because of its subtle nature, it has the pratyagatman. When it is awakened, it tries to find out its real source and becomes one with the Atman. That is why we say the Jiva and Shiva become one. The Jivatma becomes one with the Paramatma, and that is the whole goal of yoga, to disassociate with Prakriti. Purusha, when it is known as the Jivatma, the Pratyagatman, Pratyak Chetana, it is known as Pratyak Chetana in yoga. In Vedanta, it is known as Pratyagatman. The self which thinks of itself with the feeling of I, with the associated with the ego, though it has disassociated, though it considers itself to be distinct from the sense organ, still the central principle or personality which gives the personality to a person, the knowing self, the Pratyagatman, which is known as Pratyagatman in Vedanta and Pratyak Chetana in Yoga. So the goal is to disassociate it with all the objects, surrounding objects, and finally attach itself to the Supreme Atman or the Purusha within, ruler within. This is what in a way integrates the heterogeneous, that is the heterogeneous physical and psychical factor. They are all combined. You can't think the mind and the subtle body and the gross body, they are heterogeneous, they mix with each other, they overlap each other. We cannot say that, oh, this is the body, this is the mind. They seem to have been intimately connected with each other. So all the physical and the psychical, that is the mental factors, they come and the consciousness integrates them into a coherent whole. The whole that we see, that I or Mr. So and so, the personality that we, the apparent man that we identify ourselves with a particular name, particular shape, particular form, particular size, particular habits, ego, and all those things, it thinks of itself as a coherent whole, a heterogeneous mixture of physical and psychic faculties that we possess. The mind, the different koshas, they give, but who is the one that sees this as a coherent whole? It is the Pratyagatman, the Atman within, the consciousness within. That is what coordinates all our physical, psychical, and vital processes. The prana, the five pranas, uh, when the imbalance is there, when the body feels heat, we try to cool it. When the body feels cold, we try to wrap ourselves. So maintaining the prana, the imbalance of the prana, correcting the imbalance of the prana, and any other imbalance that of the sense organs. If we don't hear, we put a hearing aid, try to hear. So all these processes in an individual, they are coordinated by the conscious principle which is animating the body. It is our innermost self which sees the external phenomena and also sees our own body and other things interacting with that external phenomena. So this is the real man is the only constant factor in our human personality. This particular fact maintains the identity despite all changes in the psychophysical constitution. Our body changes, our mind changes, our mood changes, but somehow we maintain our identity. We feel that it is I who am happy, I who am sorrow. I don't say that today Mr. So and so became happy and tomorrow another person became unhappy. No, it is that identity is continuously the underlying identity, the consciousness, the identity is maintained no matter, even if for temporarily, if you are unconscious or you go into coma, as soon as you get up, you feel that it is the same person who has woken up. That identity is maintained even in deep sleep when you are not conscious of the world outside, but still you don't lose your identity. You still, that conscious self feels, oh, I had a very good sleep. That feeling, who feels when you get up in the morning that I had a very good sleep or I had a very bad sleep, I had so many nightmares, so many dreams? It is the observer of all the changing conditions, external conditions, and internal conditions. So when it is waking, in the waking state, you see all the external conditions changing in front of you. When you close your eyes, when you dream, you are seeing the change in the internal conditions. Even you have a dream world, you see change even there. And when you are fully asleep, when there is no dream, still there is a world within which tells that you had a very wonderful, that witness self is still very, very active at that time. So the observer of all the changing conditions itself does not undergo change. If it undergoes change, there is no coherent experience. You will feel that yesterday somebody else within me saw this world. Today somebody else is seeing. We never feel that. Our memory, our thoughts, everything is assumes a sense of coherency. When we see outside, we see yesterday I saw it like this, today it is not there. You don't say yesterday who saw was Mr. So and so, today who is seeing this world is. You don't lose your identity, you keep your identity. It does not undergo change. If it undergoes change, like sometimes it might happen even in the split personality, but still the different personality he identifies with, even in that case, that self identity is never lost. That consciousness that I am a split personality, that there are many people who, for some reason, for some genetic disorder or some environmental disorder, they develop the so-called split personalities, and that is a psychological disorder. But still, in that, the person who feels that, who feels the split personality himself, the knower does not undergo change. It relates the succeeding events to the preceding ones, and it notices the preceding incidents that have happened in the past. It will connect it to the present instances or present events. The present events are influenced by what he saw the preceding events, and notices the variation between the two. Otherwise, how can we recognize change? He has to compare. The same self has to be there today. The one who saw a particular tree yesterday, if somebody has cut a few branches, the same person, when he passes through that place, he will see this tree was there yesterday, it was in a different shape, now it is different. So to know the variation between two events, the conscious self has to be the same. It cannot change. If the conscious self itself changes, then it cannot observe change. It is like the ideal example that is given is when you are traveling, two trains are traveling at the same rate, at the same speed. You feel the train that is running parallel to you is stationary, unless of course you hear the sound and you understand that both are moving. Otherwise, when you see, apparently, because you are also changing, the other train is also moving, both are moving. So the person who is saying he sees the train, opposite train as stationary. Only when you stand and allow the train to pass, you feel the train is moving. So these changes can be recognized only if one is stationary. If it is known as achala. In Vedanta, the self is known as achala, that which does not move. Everything moves in samsara. Even samsara means, the world is defined as one that moves. Sarati means to move. Samsara means one which constantly moves, doesn't remain stable. If that stability, constant instability, can be seen or perceived only by somebody who is stable. So we have a real self which is stable, an unreal or an apparent self which keeps on changing. This is the fundamental of the science of human possibilities, which we should know. Having once established this self, then we go further. Now, the one who is a knower and the object which is known, we just now saw, they are of contrary nature. As Shankaracharya says in his commentary, it's a very uh, peculiar thing that one who sees is stationary, one who is seen, the object and the subject are totally different in nature, like light and darkness. If one is darkness, the other is light. One is self-manifest. That is, it doesn't require another subject to see it because it is the subject itself. And it manifests the other. It enables us to see the changing world. Being in the category of the object, neither the body nor any organs can be self-manifest because they are objects, just as we see objects around us. Body is also object because it is seen by the self. The mind is also an object because it is perceived by the self. So they are not self-manifest. They can't give light themselves. They have to be dark. They have to be gross. They have to be subtle. But their nature is they are not self-manifest. Even the mind is not self-manifest. It is the knowing self behind them that manifests them all. The mind manifests because the knowing self illumines it. As pointed out by Patanjali, the mind is not the body is definitely not self-luminous, but even the mind is not self-luminous, as Vedanta also says, because it is perceivable. You can see the mind, you can observe the mind. Something which you can perceive is not self-luminous. Being being of the nature of consciousness, the knower within the real man alone is self-luminous. It does not require somebody to illuminate it, somebody to know it. It is knowledge itself. That is why it is known as Swayambhu, self-evident. None requires any proof of his own existence. Nobody will ever doubt that I exist. It is something which I know even when I am asleep, when I am in dreaming state, when I am in waking state. Every individually spontaneously knows that he is. You don't have to tell anybody that you are. That Sat aspect, that I of Satchidananda, Sat, Chit and Ananda, that I know Chit, I am conscious of all the world, and then I am happy. Especially you'll get a glimpse of that when you go into deep sleep. That's a glimpse, that's a faint Ananda that you experience. The real Ananda is only when you transcend that sleep and go into that Turiya state, the fourth state, that is full consciousness. We are partially conscious, and out of ignorance, that consciousness shines in its own glory without the external objects, and then you feel that sleep is such a wonderful thing. If you if you know the joy of, if you are sleepless for several nights and suddenly you get a wonderful sleep, that faint little joy that you get, if you multiply it millions of times, that is the joy of Turiya, or the transcendental consciousness. Because in sleep, your organs become quiet, your internal organs become quiet, you don't dream. Your external organs become quiet because only maybe the little functions of the heart and all, which is unconscious action. It's they are not, you don't always perceive that the heart is beating unless you put your mind to that, unless you put a stethoscope. Otherwise, all the functions of the body are autonomous. They are not sympathetic. You don't will them. It is going on. So in the dream also, or in the deep sleep also, all the Gyanendriyas and the Karmendriyas, the sense organs, go to sleep. They get rest. When they get rest, when the dream self also gets rest, then the body, then the self enjoys a little bit of the Ananda of Brahman is seen. That is why it is known as Sat, Chit and Ananda. That is our real self. But now we have limited Sat. We think this is our body is our Sat. Our prana is our Sat. We think the conscious body, we are conscious of so many things. So we think that is the ultimate consciousness. That is why our Satchidananda is contracted, as it were. It is not the original Satchidananda, which is transcendental. So every individual, we come to this conclusion now. He knows that he is. He takes for granted his own existence as a person who is cognizing this whole world. He is the Sat, he is the Chit, he is the Chit. He believes that he exists, that is Sat, or not only that, he knows that he exists. There's not a single moment when, even in dream or deep sleep, that a person thinks that he does not exist. He exists even in deep sleep. Otherwise, when he gets up, how will he know that he had a good sleep? Because he was existing. So, he doesn't require any proof of his own existence. Similarly, he does not require any proof that he is the cognizer. He is the seer of all the things that is seen by him, including his own body, including his internal states, internal thoughts, everything he is seeing. So, he is Chit Sarupa. He is Sat Sarupa. Sat means existence. He is pure existence, he is pure knowledge. On the basis of this, he determines the existence and non-existence of all else. The existence of each and every object, whether it is known or unknown, presupposes the existence of the luminous self and the knower self, one who knows. Either he knows that I don't know. If somebody asks, have you seen an elephant? He said, no, I don't know. I don't know what an elephant. Even to know that, the self has to be there. If you ask a person, have you seen the elephant? If he says yes, he knows it is an object. But if he is hearing for the first time, he has not seen an elephant. Even, even to say that I do not know the elephant. What is that elephant? I don't know. Even to say that, he has to know something. He has to know that he doesn't know. Who is the one who knows that he doesn't know some things? That I, that consciousness, that Satchidananda. The luminous self, therefore, shines of itself. It is self-luminous. It does not manifest itself. The manifestation that you see, no reflex process is involved in manifestation of the self. It is this self-luminosity, this quality of self-luminosity that differentiates spirit, Chaitanya, from matter, Jada, Chit and Jada. Thakur, when he blessed on Kalpataru day, Tomader Chaitanya Hok, means know yourself, know your real self, not the apparent self. You are making all the mistakes, you are feeling all the sorrow because you know your apparent self. The day you know your real self, that is the highest blessing Thakur gave. Tomader Chaitanya Hok. Differentiate the spirit and the matter. Separate God and the mammon. Know the spirit as spirit. That is the essence of all teachings. Even Jesus said that God is spirit and should be worshipped as spirit. So when he said that God, it means the Satchidananda within, who is of the nature of pure consciousness, pure spirit. So Jesus said, you cannot worship God unless you identify yourself with the Jivatma or that Pratyak Chaitana or Chaitanya, that little consciousness on which you meditate. So when you do japa, when you really do sadhana, what you do is first identify the little Chaitana which is within. That is why they say, Kaschid Dhira Antar Atmana Maikshat, that famous verse of the Kathopanishad. You have to remember again and again. That is the essence of Vedanta. First discover that small Pratyak Chaitana, that Pratyak Atman, Kaschid Dhira Antar Atmana, Pratyak Atmana Maikshat, Avrutta Chakshu Antarat Paranchikani Vyatrunat Swayambhu Tasmat Parang Pashyati Na Antaratman Kaschid Dhira Pratyak Atmana Maikshat Avrutta Chakshu Amrutatvam Icchat. Desiring immortality, the Dhira, the wise man, who learns from other experiences. Yesterday we discussed about good and evil. What does evil do? Swami Vivekananda was very compassionate. The evil people or the people who make mistakes, they are like our teachers. They make mistakes, they suffer so that we learn. If we are wise, if we are dhiraha. So the Yama is telling Nachiketa, you be wise. Learn from the experience of others. That if you run after the world, you will be caught in its meshes, you will become jada. You will become matter. If you run after matter, you will become matter. If you run after the spirit, you will become spirit. So, Kaschid Dhira, some brave people. It requires tremendous strength to give up, to have Vairagya and go within. Vairagya means going away from the gross. So, going away from the jada and going towards the Chaitanya is known as Vairagya. So people think Vairagya means a very big sacrifice. In fact, Buddha joked once when somebody told him that you are giving up the whole world, you gave up the kingdom, you gave up the wealth, you are giving all these things. What a great man you are. He said, no, no, I bow down to you because you are greater than me. I have given up the jada for Chaitanya, for infinite joy, infinite existence, infinite bliss. So I have not given up anything. I have given up the useless. I have given up the dirt of this world which would have bound me. And I have got nirvana, the highest bliss. In fact, you people are worthy of worship because you are sacrificing yourself and giving up the kingdom of heaven for the kingdom of this earth, which is absolutely jada, which is inert. So who is a greater renouncer? You are a greater vairagi. So that person perhaps did not understand, because for him accumulating riches, accumulating more and more inert things which will never be useful after even when he was alive, after that definitely it will not be useful. So this clinging to the jada, clinging to matter, as against clinging to Chaitanya, that which differentiates the Chaitanya from the jada, the pure spirit. So Buddha told this person that don't praise me. In fact, I should be grateful to you that you showed me what misery is, what dukkha is, after running after this material world, running after desires and running after the gross world. You suffered. Had those four people whom Buddha saw not suffered, then Buddha would not have got nirvana. So he thinks that they are greater vairagis. They have renounced the kingdom of God, which is full of bliss, and they have embraced certain things which are making them miserable. So embracing the jada, that is why Yudhishthira and all these great characters in the Mahabharata, they saw through the frailty of this world. They saw all the Krishna again and again shows his Vishwarup Darshana. Why these things are shown? Just to show that just as good exists, there is evil also existing in equal measure. And happiness comes with the sorrow, the crown of sorrow on its head. Happiness comes with the crown of sorrow on its head. So you can't have one without having the other. But the people who succumb to that, who suffer because of that, are our great teachers. That's why Swamiji says, don't criticize anybody. Don't criticize the worldly persons. They are giving us invaluable lessons. They are suffering so that you don't commit the same mistake. We don't commit the same mistake. So they are in fact great benefactors of mankind. That is how Swamiji looked upon these people who struggled, who suffered. And he said, don't laugh or don't criticize them. They are the ones who are cautioning you. Somebody is burning his hands and finger. He goes in the army, in the battlefield. You know, some infantry people are the first ones to go. And poor people, they are the first ones to be killed. Only because of that, the others can advance. So, Swamiji said, Swami Vivekananda said, these people who are object lessons of how worldliness leads to sorrow are teaching by their own example, by sacrificing themselves, sacrificing the spirit to get attached to the matter. And then finally, when the matter does not give them permanent happiness, they collapse, they die of sorrow. So those lessons at least enlighten the people who are a little wise, who are dhiraha, like Nachiketa. Kaschid dhiraha, he says, by going out, I saw what is happening to these people around me. What is happening to his own father, who in the pursuit of imaginary heaven was doing all sorts of wrong practices. So Nachiketa is upset to see his own father who taught him all these things. He is not understanding the essence of the scriptures. So Yama tells him, Kaschit Dhira, you are a Dhira, you are a wise person. At least you have learned from your father's mistakes, from your other people's mistakes. And you are wise not to fall into the same trap. So here the luminous self, the Purusha, has to be careful, not get entangled in Prakriti. But unfortunately, this mixture of Jada and Chaitanya, Chit Jada Granthi, is the knot. That is why it is always known as the knot. You are the pure self, but unfortunately, you have been tied with the inert thing world outside. And the more the knot is, tight is, more the more tight the knot is within, the more difficult you find to extricate yourself from that bondage. And the bondage drags you down. The weight of the world drags you down. So that is the essence of the human possibilities. Our possibilities, it's like a heavyweight lifter. He is already burdened. There are several people hanging on him. So he cannot lift. He already is burdened with the things that are hanging on to him. Then how can he lift a new thing? He has to first free himself. That is what Vairagya does. So now this light within, this Chaitanya within, is apparently the light with the, not light within, the light that we see outside is apparently luminous. It is self-luminous. No, but it is not self-aware. You can switch on and switch off that light. The light, so don't compare the light within to the physical light, because that light can be controlled. Whereas this light never goes. It always remains, it always reveals truth, it reveals the Sat, it reveals Chit, it gives you knowledge. The knowledge of the known, the knowledge of the unknown, the knowledge of sleep, the knowledge of dream, the knowledge of the waking state, everything, the knowledge part of it, the anything that is without consciousness, including the sun which shines, belongs to the domain of matter, because it is not its own luminosity. It is, that is why the Vishwarup Darshan, Sri Krishna says, I am the light behind the sun, I am the light behind the moon, I am the light behind everything that is apparently illuminated. They are living on borrowed light. The Chaitanya or the consciousness that you have gives the illumination to all the external things. But now this is as far as matter is concerned, but the mind belongs to another category. It's finer matter. It is constituted of the finest and the purest type of material substance. So that's why they say the mind is sukshma. Sukshma means fine. Sthula means gross. But they are the same, but one is finer. That is why it is more pure. So the luminous self is the sole spiritual entity in the individual. That is one conclusion. Man is essentially the pure spirit. But if the mind is gross, if the mind is subtle, like the buddhi, if your mind is full of wisdom, then it is more and more subtle. The more and more subtle our mind becomes. By the practice of sadhana, by the practice of japa, what japa does is, it reduces the gross mind, the reactive mind, into buddhi, the subtle mind. So every time you repeat a mantra, the inherent power of the subtle power, the consciousness within the mantra, they call it mantra chaitanya. So it is the mantra chaitanya that cleanses our mind, our gross mind, our depressions, our anger, our sorrow. All these are because of our the gross nature of the mind, the reactive nature of the mind. So the mantra, it is a sound symbol, it is a thought which is so fine because it has come from pure sattva. It is It is come from people who have had this illumination. The ever shining pure spirit was revealed, and the rishis came up with this mantra. The first thing they realized was these mantras. The mantras are not ordinary words, gross words, which we use to describe. They are special revelations of the spirit as they become fine matter. And you use that fine power of the mantra to destroy the gross power of the world outside, the gross power of the thoughts. You purify the mind by the light or the purifying power of the mantra. So it is the radiance of that spiritual self which, as mantra given by the Guru, illuminates the psychophysical system. It illuminates the mind, it illumines the organs, the body, and makes it fully conscious, fully aware of the world outside. So this luminous self governs the whole psychophysical system by its radiance. Because being composed of the purest and the finest part type of matter, the mind has the capacity to transmit the radiance of the luminous self to the organs and the body. By themselves, the body and the organs will not have this luminosity. That is why the mind is important. It is our mind, through the mind, it is through the mind that, through the mind, which is a finest type of matter, that it transmits the radiance of the luminous self to the organs, and then you find the organs very active, the body also light, and body also highly energetic. It comes from the mind. The mind transmits that radiance of the luminous self within, the Pratyagatman, the bright light within. That is what we are trying to awaken through our spiritual sadhana. So that illumines the organs and the body through the mind, through the buddhi. It is something like if you take a sheet of glass. Now that sheet of glass transmits physical light to opaque objects. As the medium of transmission, it becomes more or less permeated by the luster of consciousness. The light which is behind the glass gives a kind of shining feeling to the glass. It is just allowing. If it is transparent, if it is opaque, then the light will not pass. You will see it dark. But the more pure the glass is, the more the light will pass through it. If it is dark glass, less light will pass. If it is more dense, then less light will pass. If it is very gross like iron, no light will pass. But if it is very fine, very, you can say very transparent, not opaque, it transmits more light. So also, as the medium of transmission, it becomes more or less permeated by the luster of consciousness. Just as a window pane, if you see, turns bright while transmitting sunlight, or just as an iron ball becomes a glow if it is permeated by the heat of the fire, so also the mind shines with the borrowed light of consciousness. Just as the fire, if you heat a ball, iron ball, it shines because it is the fire that shines through that ball, or the light that shines through the glass. The sunlight passes through the window panes, the glass. Similarly, our body shines, our mind shines, our mind understands because of the light of consciousness that is behind it. That is why the mind has been very often confused with this light of consciousness. In the Western thinkers, they generally, normally all philosophies identify the spiritual self with the mind. But in Vedanta, there are three existences. One is the body, one is the subtle mind, and then one is the self. So it is known as tripartite personality. But most of the Western philosophers, they believe the luminous self itself is the one entity, and the body is end. So body and mind, and body and mind is the self. So because the mind, it is like saying the glass is the sun. The bulb or the sun is something other than the glass. But if you don't see the sun, if you just see, then you think, oh, the glass is giving us light. That is exactly the mistake they make. They don't think of a self which is illuminating the glass. They consider the mind, which is like the glass, as giving the light itself. Just as it would be foolish to think that your window is shining. Window is not shining. The glass panes of the windows are not shining. It is the sun behind that is. So the sun, the glass, which is the mind, and the objects inside, which is the body. So the body, mind, and the soul are the shining self. This is the fundamental difference between Vedanta and the Western philosophy. Western thinkers have very often identified the spiritual self, the sun, with the mind, with the glass. Imbued with this consciousness, the mind serves as a primary instrument of knowledge. So, no doubt it gives you mind, enables you to think, gives you knowledge. But it is not knowledge. It is indispensable to, the mind is indispensable to every form of thought or cognition. The 10 organs, as we described, the Pancha, 5 Indriyas, Jnanendriyas, and 5 Karmendriyas, the physical body receive the light of consciousness through the mind. Just as the sun shines through the glass and illumines the whole house. So according to its own nature and tinged with consciousness, this light which is coming through the mind, a enlightened mind, a wise mind shows more light. If the mind is dull, less light comes and people make mistakes. So the organs make mistakes, the body makes mistakes, and we do evil actions because that light of the Atman is not shining fully. So what spirituality does is increase the power of the illumination. By purifying the mind, what do you mean by purifying the mind? Just making it less dense, just making it less opaque, making it more transparent. The more transparent the glass becomes, the more light comes in. It's an excellent example. When a person dreams during the sleep, his sense organs, they lose all power of perception. The motor organs, the power of action, and the body, the power of sensation. Everything is lost, and the mind also loses its power of volition. This is because, why does this happen during sleep? Why do the sense organs don't see anything? They lose the power of perception. Some of the motor organs, not the voluntary heart and all, but the motor organs don't apparently move. In dream they may move. In a disturbed sleep they may move. But the power of everything goes away in deep sleep, because even the willpower, that also goes. That is why you go to sleep. If the willpower was there a little bit, then you would have dreamt or you would have woken up. Why this happens is because the consciousness of the soul recedes wholly from the body and partly from the mind. If it had gone fully out of the body, then the body would have died. So sleep is not death. It has totally gone out of the body. It has receded from the body, the consciousness, but still it is illuminating a part of the mind which says, I am sleeping, I am happily sleeping, I am enjoying my sleep. That sense is still there. So in dreamless sleep, all his mental operations also cease, because the mental operations, in the sense the interaction with the world, ceases, because consciousness recedes from the mind also. No thought, no feeling, no memory, no imagination, no cognition stirs the mind. Even egoism drops in dreamless sleep. In dream, though, these things are there. In dreamless sleep, in dream, feeling is there, memory is there, old imagination is there, though they get mixed up. Strange things are seen, and we don't see things as we see in the waking state. There is no coherence. We see wonderful things in the dream. But in dreamless sleep, that is deep sleep, all the other mental actions also cease. Otherwise, there will be dream. No feeling is there, no memory is there, only a little bit of faint ignorance or memory is there of the sleep. And no imagination is there, no cognition, no internal cognition. You don't even see imaginary worlds inside as you see in the dream. Even that vanishes. Even ego goes away. A little bit of ego, the ego drops. The incessant fluctuations of the mind become completely lulled. They become completely calm. That is why every day we need sleep. We very go very close to that luminous Satchidananda. We don't reach. If we had reached, then we would have got mukti. But in deep sleep, you get a very minor taste of that bliss of Turiya. Even the involuntary bodily functions such as respiration, digestion, assimilation of food, which are connected with the autonomic nervous system, they continue in deep sleep because they are run by a force in our body which is known as prana. Prana can never go to sleep, it keeps awake. The mind may go to sleep, but the prana, that is why pranayama and the control of prana is very important. That is the force which keep the involuntarily body functions like autonomic nervous system awake. Otherwise, the body would have stopped, the heart would have stopped beating. And they are like guards, the body, the five pranas, they are guarding our body when you are in deep sleep. They don't allow the autonomic nervous system to stop all the functions of the body. The blood circulation goes on, the digestion goes on, everything goes on. When the mind and organs are at full rest, the external organs are resting, eyes are resting, ears are resting, the voluntary organs are resting, but the internal organs which are run by the autonomic nervous system, they are running. The heart cannot stop. So undoubtedly, a little glimmer of consciousness received from the luminous self keeps the prajna, the prana, alive in waking, dream and deep sleep as well. So Shankaracharya beautifully puts it. He says, it is being illumined by the light of consciousness of the Atman, the body, the prana, everything. That the vital principle functions. The prana functions not of its own. It receives the light of consciousness. The Atman does not leave, the Jivatma does not leave the body. The prana does not leave. The prana are like guards. But when the prana goes, then the physical body also goes, because the physical body needs the prana for sustaining. The heart needs the prana. So that's why when a person dies, you say the prana goes away. But the mind stays. The subtle mind, which is illumined by the Atman, the Jivatma, that continues the journey, finds little bit of prana, as I will come to know, learn about it. The wonderful theory of Udana Vayu and all the different pranas, how they become a vehicle. They carry the mind of a person after death. They disassociate themselves with the body, but they don't disassociate themselves. A little bit of prana which is needed to carry the mind, the subtle mind, to another body. That which was running the body, that prana diffuses. And that force diffuses and enters the cosmic prana. But the other prana, the little prana which forms the vehicle to carry the sukshma sharira, to carry the mind, the subtle mind, so that it can take up a new body, that's still there. That is still there. So the only source of life is the vital, the only source of energy or the source of chetana for this prana is the luminous self. So Krishna tells Arjuna, just as the sun, O Bharata, lights up the entire world, so the self abiding in the psychophysical system illumines the whole psychophysical domain. It illumines the body in a gross way, it illumines the prana, it illumines the mind. Without that, the body cannot survive. So the self is the sole ruler antaryami of this psychophysical organism. It is not that the ears hear, the eyes see, the mouth speaks, the hands work, the mind thinks, the vital principle animates. In fact, it is the indwelling luminous self that hears through the ears, it sees through the eyes, it speaks through the mouth, it works through the hands, thinks through the mind, and enlivens and animates through the pranas. So when a person says, I hear, I speak, actually it is the luminous self which he is identifying. He should identify with the luminous self. It is like the glass of the window saying, I am illumining the whole room. It is as foolish as that. When I say I hear, my ears are hearing. You are hearing through the ears. That is the correct language. It is like the light is passing through the glass. The glass, it would be arrogant on the part of the glass to say that I am illumining the whole room. No, it is the sun which passes through the glass which illumines. So this fundamental principle, if we understand, then we will try to understand what spirituality is, what it does to us, why it is necessary, why does it open infinite possibilities, why we are still struggling with the physical and mental possibilities and we think we are great achievers. All the big career things, the career that you have, the greatness that you achieve in the physical world, they are all paltry compared to the attainment of this great self. That is why Kaschit Dhira Antaratman, that person is a real Dhira, who does not go after, who does not sacrifice himself, as Buddha said, to tell the wise people. How did Nachiketa become wise? Because his foolish father sacrificed himself and doing all sorts of foolish things and becoming sorrowful later on. Nachiketa became wise by seeing his father. If his father had to commit error and show that these things don't lead to heaven, nor does it lead to any welfare in this world. So his worldliness became the cause of Nachiketa's liberation. So the wise self, the luminous self, which illumines the buddhi first, then the reactive mind, then the prana, then the body. But people who think it is the body that is important, it is the prana that is important, and they keep thinking that the development of the body and the prana and the gross world itself will give them everything, that is not going to lead to fulfillment. That's why Buddha said, it is you who are sacrificing so that I know the importance of nirvana. I see your sorrow and don't follow your footsteps and get stuck, get bound into that dirty mud of the world. I don't want, that is what Buddha says. In fact, you are gathering all the dirt of the world and thinking, and in fact, I am what I have rejected. I have rejected the dirt for the beautiful self within, and you have rejected the beautiful self. It is like rejecting the beautiful diamonds and the treasure within and taking away the cover, the dirty cover or the dirty enclosure. It is just like that. A thief comes to rob. He says, no, in fact, I have gone after the wonderful treasure within, the self within, which is like a treasure. And you have accepted the dirt which by accepting the dirt that is rejected, Buddha said, means I do not think I am a more selfish person. Indirectly, he was saying, I am more selfish because I took the highest. I did not settle down for I didn't settle down for a kingdom, a temporary happy life, and sacrificed myself like other people did. In fact, I learned from the lessons. So that is what Nachiketa is told by Yama, that Kaschit Dhira, only if you are a courageous person, you will try to see the light within. Otherwise, you will be happy with the shadows outside. You will be playing with the shadows and get disillusioned. You will not go after the real light which is within. You will think that the glass which illumines the room inside is the sun, and you will be happy thinking that the glass is illumining my room. But the moment the sun sets, the glass becomes dark, and you don't understand what has happened. Where has the light gone? So it is the self, the discovery of the real self, the illuminating self, the Chaitanya, the Chaitana. That's why Thakur said, Tomader Chaitanya ho. Said, I can't give you a greater gift than this desire to learn what Chaitanya is, what Chaitana is. And let that Chaitanya be awakened. Okay. So now let me see if there are some questions. There's one question. As one wakes up, if you have a stomach ache during sleep, does bodily pain bring the soul back down during samadhi? I don't know how they are connected. If you have a stomach ache, perhaps you will not sleep at all, because even if you sleep by taking some painkillers, so the pain definitely comes, the soul comes down from samadhi. It is totally different. That is the difference between sleep and samadhi. Swamiji says, if it is samadhi, then a person who was ignorant before going into samadhi comes as a wise person. Whereas a person, if he is a fool, before going to sleep, when he wakes up, he is again the same fool. He doesn't become an enlightened person. That is the difference between sleep and samadhi. So you have to make a distinction between that. The difference is, if there is no transformation and somebody says, I had samadhi yesterday and today is the same, he has the same ignorance, then something is wrong. Because samadhi totally changes that personality. So if he goes with a stomach ache, stomach ache is just a gross example, but just as in the sleep, he goes with a stomach ache during the sleep. For some reason, he forgets for the time being because he is too tired. But as soon as he gets up, again the stomach ache would be there, if it is not cured by some tablets or something. So he feels this. So a person who was depressed when he went to sleep, when he comes down also he is depressed. Whereas a person who goes into samadhi, when he comes down, he is not the same person. He is a totally changed person. Yes. How is it decided which next body the soul prana is going in? There are many considerations. If you attend the Friday class, you will get an idea, because we have not yet come to that sutra. Patanjali, Jati Ayu Bhogaha. Jati, that is species, Ayu, the lifespan, and Bhogaha, what you will enjoy or what you will suffer. These three things, Jati, Ayu, Bhoga, will depend on your karma shaya. So it is decided by yourself, your own karma, our own karma shaya, the samskaras that we have, the receptacle, the vessel of karma shaya which we are carrying from this birth to next birth, that will decide what type of body, which next body he will get. He can't choose. If he has certain karmas to work out, the jati means how, whether he will be born as a boy or a girl, or a healthy man or a weak man or a strong man, or what type of animal, everything will be depending. Jati means the species. Then ayu, how long will that body live? Even that is determined by your karma, by the karma shaya. And bhoga, what are the experiences you are going to have? So everything is predestined, predetermined when you come. So that is why they say, be careful. As you think, as you do, so you become. So what we collect, the karma shaya that we collect, the good samskaras that we collect will come to our help. The bad samskaras are also come to haunt us. So whatever we do, we cannot get away with it. That is the idea behind the karma theory, that you have to know how to act. You have to know, that is what spirituality is all about, to know how to act, to know how to think, to explore all the human possibilities so that I don't get a horrible birth in the next life. There are many people who suffer so much that they say next birth I don't want this kind of birth. For some reason, for some things they find that they have so some people, maybe the suffering was so much, the vasanas were so strong, the negative vasanas, that no, I don't want this suffering, I don't want this suffering. Constantly he has created that karmashaya. So that karmashaya, when he is born, he will not take up a body which suffered a lot in the previous birth. Said, I don't want again the whole thing to be repeated again. So that is how one decides. It is decided what body or soul, jati, ayu and bhoga, bhoga vasanas. Okay. So I'll take your leave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Parnamastu.